Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having us here. This has been a great event already. I'm absolutely fanboying over all the people I've met, from Smite and Paladins, and of course Odin, who I don't see anymore, but somewhere back there. It was really, really cool. I'll go ahead and start by introducing myself. My name is Daksh. I'm one of the co-founders of Tabnam. Went to Georgia Tech, majored in computer science with a focus on language AI, which turned out to be a very happy coincidence. Formerly, I was briefly at Amazon, and I've grown up playing Brawlhalla, Portal, and Halo, and I recently found out that Brawlhalla is made right here in the state. I don't know if anyone here worked on it, but one of my favorite games of all time, so really excited to be here. My team and I have spent the last several months going through subreddits for various games, going through Steam reviews, going through YouTube comment sections. I don't recommend it to anyone. I don't think it's good for your mental health. I've seen some of the worst society has to offer in these places, but we're trying to answer a very simple question. In all of this mess, is there anything useful for devs? Is there any actually good feedback for developers? And that's the question that we've been trying to answer. And I'm happy to report that yes, deep in the hidden crevices of Reddit and of Twitter, there is actually useful feedback for devs. The problem is what's not in the hidden crevices and what's in plain sight is people that think they know better than the devs, a lot of memes and shit posts, and just a lot of things that don't really contribute to the conversation in any way. For example, this guy. This is 80% of most of the subreddits that we went through. We saw this a lot. If I had never met a dev before, I think devs are the worst people in the world if I were to only trust Reddit. But I think today's experiences say otherwise. So I think the Reddit people might be wrong. I don't know. We know a couple of things for sure. Great studios listen to their communities, and gamers are telling you what they want. And they're telling you everywhere. Their feedback is scattered across the internet. You can find it on the top hot posts of Reddit, or you can find it deep in the comment sections of an IGN article. But all of this stuff is out there, and people are saying it. The problem is, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Most of it is nonsense, but there's a little bit of useful information somewhere deep hidden there. And if you've seen in a lot of community managers that we talk to are spending a lot of their time going through all of this is nonsense, and to read things like this, like, guys, help out. My wife said if there are 300 thumbs ups and 50 awards, she'll buy me a new PC and a case of beer. This is not a scam. This guy's pretending to have a wife. How do you filter this out? And for example, this one, this sentence I find very, very interesting, because I think for the first time as an external viewer, I saw that the language that these subreddits use is adjacent to, but not exactly English, and that makes it it's exceptionally difficult to extract feedback. Because a lot of esoteric terms and a lot of words that a normal feedback solution is not going to be able to read through. Anything that you're using for retail, etc. So we've developed a system now that reliably can extract instantly all of the useful information that exists on the internet. We're iterating it over time, and it's been a lot of months in development. And here are the steps that we followed. We start by scraping and aggregating. So we went through Discord, IGN comments, Reddit, Steam, YouTube comments, etc. Decided to skip Twitter. Truly nothing useful on this website. Skip straight through. And then we have a two-step. The first one is we trained a classifier to identify things that are unlikely to be useful, so words and phrases. For example, these devs suck. Nothing useful has ever followed that sentence, so we decided to get rid of all that stuff. And then second, we have to teach an AI to understand gamer language. So we decided to scrape through the major subreddits of vast majority of games and downloaded, at this point, hundreds of thousands of Steam reviews to make an AI understand how gamers talk and learn this entirely new, not English language. The next step was, so at this point, you have all this filtered data. It's kind of like having a library that has survived an earthquake. It's a lot of useful stuff, but it's all kind of in a mess. So we now have to organize it all. So we use OpenAI's embeddings. We index all of this information and make it in a way that it can be easily searchable. And then we have this question, like, how do we make this information searchable in a way that's more natural? It's not some deep and analytic software that you need to be a data scientist to understand. And we figured, well, what if you could just ask? You could just ask questions to this feedback library in plain English. You could ask, what do gamers dislike about melee combat, for example, and just get an answer based on all of the feedback we trained on. So we did just that, and just for this meeting, we've actually created a sample demo of that. You can check it out right now at askgamers.tabnam.com. Can we leave this up for a second? We can switch over to the tab where we can play around this. We were in the high-rise building, so we went ahead and trained on the subreddit for Divine Knockout. There's definitely a new game, very active community, and we can go ahead and ask it questions. For example, list 5 things. Is this large enough to see? Just zoom in a little bit.
Especially if you narrate it.
Oh, perfect. List 5 things people love about this game, for example. Go and ask. It takes a second to think the first time you ask. It's pulling up all of those information. All of this is a model that's trained on the Steam reviews and the posts and comments on Reddit, except that thankfully I don't have to do that. I had a bot do it, so I don't have to. It was a toxic subreddit in parts. Yeah, but there's information that's in there that's useful. I'm wondering if this is, oh, there it is. Okay. People love the characters and play styles, the strategic depth, the competitive scene. People love the customization, the community. And you can ask much more specific questions as well. Of course, this is about gamer feedback, so we have to ask what people dislike about this game. List 5 things people dislike. And see where that takes us. To YouTube. There. So it looks like people are reporting crashes, of course, glitches and bugs. And so this is an interesting one, poor hitbox detection. So now I want to know, for example, we want to make this a lot more conversational, almost like if you had a community manager that went out there and read all this stuff, what would you want to ask them? You want to ask a conversational situation. So I want to get a little bit more information about the hitboxes. Oh, poor hitbox section. So what do people dislike about hitboxes in particular? And this is all about it. If you have a drop down here that lets you train it on a couple of games, and if you have any other games you'd like to train it on, please send me an email and I'll add those. It looks like people dislike them because they're difficult to determine the area of effect. This is the kind of stuff you can get really, really deep into. Of course, developers of Divine Knock will have much better questions to ask. So this one is talking about people dislike hitboxes because they're often difficult to determine the area of effect, making it difficult to retaliate by dodging or using an attack or ability to move higher. And additionally, some hitboxes have tracking that is considered to be overdone, making it difficult to avoid the attack. Very succinct answers is as simple as just asking these questions. So that's kind of where our demo is at. And it doesn't operate perfectly on every single question. So it's very much a work in progress. And that brings us to what we're working on now more broadly, which is the Tabnam platform. We're coming into beta, and we're hoping to find game studios that will help us make it better and better and find value in it as much as possible. So that brings us to Tabnam. We're a feedback aggregation and analysis platform purpose-built for community managers and game studios. None of the other feedback systems that are built for retail or for restaurants or anything apply, because this is a very, very different problem than that. So we want to build something that's specifically for community managers. When we first heard in a conversation with a community manager some time ago that him and his team were spending hours in a week on Reddit, we said, no, that's not acceptable. we need to have an entirely different solution for this. So that's kind of how we went down this path of building this out. So I'm just gonna quickly go a little tour of this. So we scrape gamer feedback from all these variety of websites, and we give you a real-time analysis of what your gamers are saying about your game. And instead of spending all those hundreds of hours reading through feedback on the internet, we'll do all of that instantly, and we'll generate insights from the feedback and conversations. And because we've actually maintained this library of all the feedback, we can tell you how frequently something's getting mentioned. So if you rolled out a new update, how did that affect? We tried to fix some problem. So in this case, for example, you have action items and top complaints. But let's say that you're a particularly analytical studio and you want to ask even deeper questions. We'll let you just articulate that in English. So for example, you wanted to figure out how gamepad gamers are thinking about your game. And you can just ask that question in plain English. You can say, what complaints and suggestions come from gamers using gamepads? Because I know it can be a very different experience on PC than using mouse and keyboard. And over here, it'll generate that. It'll say, the most commonly 31,000 mentions, people want that sensitivity controls if that's something that your game doesn't have. And this is like incredibly succinct insights that you can get essentially instantly. Very simple how it works. You select the titles, you tell us which titles you want us to work on. You select which feedback sources. So we have some that we support, and since we're in beta, we'll add as many more data sources as you like. If there's something or if my community is on Slack, for example, we can plug into that for whatever reason. And then within a few hours, you'll get real-time analysis of your feedback. So we have our pricing model. This is in beta, completely free for anyone in this room to use pretty much indefinitely. As our current goal is to make the perfect thing for game studios. We're looking for someone to partner with us on this, but that's full access to the analysis, the ability to create custom analyses as you wish. Of course, add new data sources and customer support 24/7. That's the 3 of us. You're looking at us right now. You can get our phone numbers, text us anytime. The whole team is here. Yeah, and I'll reintroduce myself. I'm gonna allow Davis and Sugun to do that as well.
Yeah, hi, I'm Davis. I'm like the head of product. I do like the front end design for everything.
Yeah, I'm Suho, and I just do most of the back end work, and yeah, just here and there. Yeah.
Sugun's also a prolific illustrator.
Oh yeah.
And, yeah,
I don't
the art's great. So if anyone's looking for, yeah. And we have a list of investors. The other two don't matter, but Chris here, this is the most important one. favorite investor. Yeah. It's the first one to believe in us. Yeah. So this is our team looking for betas. And if you're interested, of course, you can come talk to me or anyone on the team. You can also directly book a demo on tabnam.com/demo if you have any questions. And if you just want to generally chat about what it was like to spend that much time on those game subreddits, you can ask. You can look through the pain in my eyes. But yeah, thank you so much. This is the this is the presentation.
I know we got questions. I have questions.
Yes.
I know
Great.
folks will have,
Yeah, I'll take questions.
I'll have questions as well. So one of the things that you talk about is scraping for information. Have you seen anyone try and stimulate good conversations that you can track, try and get the community to talk about specific issues in a way that you could track them effectively?
Yeah, so that's something that was very interesting. There were some subreddits where community managers would ask questions specifically to create a good conversation going. And one of the cool things about us is we don't look at posts and comments in isolation. We'll see them as a hierarchical conversation. And that makes it very interesting. So for example, if you're if a person was just about to start a conversation about a new game mode that was rolled out, and that starts its own insight, you can actually organically, all you have to do is like go into your community, ask some relevant questions, stir the pot, get a conversation going. A few hours later, all of that conversation has been plugged into your dashboard, and suddenly you can see in great detail what the key takeaways from the conversation were, without having to dig into the underbelly of the conversation itself.
And one of the things I like about this tool is you go into the specificity, you avoid all the it's a suck sore comments. You really get to dig that. So I know there are other questions out there. So.
Yep.
So I noticed that you're saying you browse through Reddit, Discord, and all those other stuff, but it looks like right now Tabnam is focused mostly on like console games and all that. But my question is there any plan in the future to possibly browse the mobile stores, comment section, and feedbacks for their specific games, like say Clash Royale, and browse the comments and feedbacks on that game specifically in the Play Store or iOS app stores?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an integration for App Store, but we found that the conversations in the App Store reviews are generally not as nuanced as the ones on Reddit. So Clash is one of the ones we looked at. So Clash's App Store comments are pretty surface level, generally speaking. But if you go into their subreddit, you'll find like 8 layers of comments, and someone has some very specific opinions on something, and that can be a lot more interesting. But we have that as a data source for information we get from there. Yeah.
It looks like it's kind of focused on gathering information in current state, what's out there right now. What about some sort of a time-based thing? So you could say at this point in time, we have this kind of response, and then a month later it's this, 2 months later it's that. So you could track things, or these are new trending topics. We have a new release come out, and this topic went through the roof or whatever. Yeah,
so that's the exact thing we're working on right now, which is can you see for any of those boxes, like the complaints or the action items, last 7 days versus last 30 days and so on. And we want to actually, one of the things we were kind of work on when we start working with many of you guys is can we align these with like specific updates or rollouts. So for example, if a big complaint was, so for one of the games you saw, one of the things, if you have an inactive player, they don't automatically get kicked out of the game. And that seems like a common complaint. So let's say that you rolled out a patch for that. Now you want to see if the number of complaints for that has gone down in the next few weeks. So that's what we want to sync these with the rolled out updates. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you can go ahead.
So when you search the result, if you were to search it again with that same prompt, does it give you different results, or is it always like filtered to be the same result?
So that's a really good question. So it's for almost all types of questions, it'll potentially articulate it differently, but it'll be the same result. Every now and then, for example, if you were to ask it, it really comes down to how you word it. So for example, if you say, list the top 5 complaints, in the future it might or like understand that prompt a little bit differently. But if you say top 5 most mentioned complaints, that's definitely much more objective. So you'll get a consistent answer every time.
So like when you said 5 things that players don't like about the characters or something, if you search that and hit the search button like 3 times, is it possible that you'll get like different results each time?
Yeah. It's so the most prominent things will appear in the results repeatedly. And run a repeated experimentation, but there could be some variation over time depending on how specific the prompt is.
Sorry, I'll try to go quickly. Is this kind of more for live service games rather than like already shipped like single player experiences, or just it could be used at any?
I think it can be used for anything. I think it's significantly more useful for a game where there's some amount of iteration, maybe some patches being rolled out, just so you can see how it changes over time. But if, for example, you only release one update a year, if you're doing every time you do a new battle pass, that's when you're rolling things out, and that's still really useful because then you have a whole year to collect feedback on how to implement next time.
Wait, I was wondering if there's any value in being able to pull a transcript out of like an hour-long critique, and like digest that or have that be part of the data set. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We did that for other categories, but we haven't, ever since we started working on video games in particular, that's a very good point. I think even Twitch streams were very interesting. Yeah, I know you had your hand up earlier. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering some more about like where you pull data from. So first one was I noticed that you don't even bother with Twitter. I was wondering if that's because of quality or if it's because it's gone through a lot of shakeups. I'm not sure if you talk to the back end in any way, and that's why it's harder to pull information from it. So
initially it was, now it's just become harder to get data out of Twitter on a technical level, but earlier our problem was kind of twofold. One was the signal to noise ratio is very, very high. It's like, if Reddit is like 95% noise, Twitter is like 99% noise, so it's like way worse. But also the quality of the signal is not very good. Like, I think you're just limited also by how much you can say on Twitter. You're not really allowed to have, there's no room for you to have a nuanced opinion. On Reddit you'll find like paragraphs, so there's a lot more room for that.
Yeah, I was wondering specifically about Twitter because I know it's really big, I guess in the AI generated content space, as well as Web3, a lot of that stuff. So it's really big there, and that's what I was wondering about. The other one is Discord. I know there's been like really dedicated communities emerging from Discord, and I didn't see it mentioned as being something you can scrape data from, or if you're...
Yeah, we haven't done that yet, but we have that on our list of, it's not on the demo that we showed, but it's right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I think the Discord is an especially interesting one, especially if your community is structured in a way that has a channel for feedback, for example, or a channel for like talking to devs. Then that makes it significantly easier to find like a high quality signal with relatively little noise.
Cool.
Yeah. Yep.
So, quick question. So, a lot of companies work through a service management platform that filters bug reports, but most gamers aren't submitting a bug report, so it's kind of like hard to track.
Yeah.
So, my question is do you have some sort of plans for sorting this information without having to like type in a question to where catered towards whatever gaming studio is using this, like where you can go on like your homepage and see like these are the top types of reports that people are talking about.
Right, yeah, that's a really good question. We actually wanted to go even a step further and create workspaces for various parts of the organization. So if there's one for QA and engineering, and that one focuses on like technical issues and bugs and latency, etc. And there's a specific section for art, and that's just for artifacting on the arts, or if it's just for quality of art. And there could be like a third one for community management, and that has to do more with like the moderation on like the Discord, etc., and what people's feedback has been on that. So we want to create like these separate solid workspaces. And one of the reasons that we had this allowed people to create their own analysis is because you can kind of create a custom dashboard with that. So for example, you could say, oh, the 3 things I'm interested in are bug reports, and I'm interested in or I'm particularly on the team that does like multiplayer, so I'm interested in like latency, network, and I'm interested in like specifically people's experiences with cross-platform multiplayer. So I can type those things out, and then that's my dashboard. Now every day I can look at, okay, this is what people are currently saying about all of these 3 topics.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. My question is, in the potential future, when it's fully running, everything's good, is there a chance that people would use this system to influence devs to create changes that aren't needed? Like people have multiple accounts to spam the same exact thing. Is there a way to filter out that possible chance? Because maybe you have a player that has 100 accounts that says this sword is OP, but it's perfectly balanced for a game.
Right. That's a really good point, and that's definitely something we've thought about a lot in other verticals as well. Is that can one person influence the entire narrative and try to influence things? I think on a lot of the platforms, especially Reddit and then to an extent Discord as well, there's kind of moderation built into it, which to an extent alleviates this, which is if you could go into an account and create 100 posts, a community of a decent size, generally, I mean, this would be a problem for larger communities because there would be a reason to influence a more influential game. And for those, you know, you can have 100 accounts, but if there's like 5,000 people on the subreddit, they're going to downvote you and you'll just progressively be shown to fewer and fewer people. So we take into account for weightage. So if even, one of the problems that we see with this versus, in this like world versus other ones is here there's, and you can very succinctly say something and thousands of people agree with you and that makes it important. Whereas it's like just because text is longer doesn't make it more important. So for example, if a person were to say, you know, I'm having a lot of trouble with like dropped frames on this particular level because the graphics are getting too heavy for my computer. And they'll just keep like, I guess like thousands of upvotes. Then we know, okay, this is very important. This needs to be like top of mind. So this is another thing. We're not looking at everything as just text. We're looking at it as a post and its tree of comments, and then for each of those comments, how important are each of them based on the moderation built into Reddit.
Okay. What about the appeal of influencers like Twitch streamers and YouTubers in their voice, because a lot of their fans are going to repost or reiterate their ideas into the game on such platforms?
Right, yeah, that's a really interesting problem as well. And that again, once again, is another problem that's very unique to video games. So I think that's something that we're still figuring out, which is how do we prevent, again, like one Twitch streamer's opinions from getting like proliferated across the community and then influencing and taking over a narrative. And right now, that's one of the reasons we haven't built that Twitch and the YouTube integration, which is how do we protect against that like very lopsided argumentation. And also, it also means that you'll have to maybe have some kind of discretion on, oh, this is a reliable, balanced person, whereas this is a person that's just here to cause havoc. And of course, that discretion is something where it would be up to the studio itself. The studio says, yeah, we like this person but not this person. We can like pick and choose. That's another reason we let you pick your sources, because if you decide that source A is too noisy or source B is not helpful, or this particular influencer doesn't have anything useful to say, we can just be like, all right, just take this out of the signal.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, how would the company know which of the sources certain comments or feedback came from? Can you give them a platform by source view?
Yeah, so all of the sources are labeled on the platform. So we don't display that right here, but you can ask, for example, if the hitbox thing came up, you can also ask in the questions, oh, can you give me some examples and sources of where people are complaining about hitbox? And they'll say, oh yeah, it's this Reddit post and this Reddit post and this Reddit post. They'll give you like specific examples.
Are you separating it by region as well?
Oh, not at the moment, no. We're also not separating it by platform, which is the next thing that's on our list. Yeah.
You have a question over there?
Yes.
Do you plan on adding other outlets? So I see right now you're only targeting IGN, but other outlets have different communities with different similar.
Yeah, definitely. So even at IGN, we're focused mainly on the comments of the article and not the post itself. We definitely want to add publications, especially ones which have these active comment sections. Mm-hmm. Again, the more interesting thing for us is, can we get if there's a scattered poll of all opinions across the internet, can we aggregate them into one? Because it's not really feasible to send out a survey. But yeah, I mean, if there are like ones you suggest where you think there's a lot of useful information, you should absolutely let us know and we'll build that integration. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
Does your system account for paid or native advertising, or just comments that are like not authentic, or is there a way to filter that eventually?
So we're still working on that classification. So it's gotten pretty good at filtering out things that are like trolls, but it hasn't quite figured out how to pick up on something that's maybe from a review farm or from this like a studio that wants to affect it. One of our base assumptions has been along the lines of that, hey, if your studio is pumping Reddit with a farm of people that are saying good things about the game, that will affect negatively the feedback doesn't need to be good, it just needs to be accurate. So so I think that's kind of part of it. But you're totally right. That's one level of classification that we are going to work on now. Yeah.
All right, any more? Last question. What was the last one? All right, great stuff.
Wait, why Tabnam? Why Man-Bat backwards, or is it Batman like?
I'm going for Man-Bat. I love that awful comic.
Yeah.
Man-Bat. This is okay. So side note, like the fact that this is an anagram for Batman was something that we're like 6 months into incorporating. We were like, oh yeah. I guess that someone pointed out. Yeah. Well, Tabnam is Latin for Tabernam Amicus, which means shop friend, because we're a friend of the shops, and. It's also one of the few .coms still available, which is a big part of that. Yeah. that's a big part of it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.